Aurorah never knew what to expect in her living room when she got home from school. Having a father who was a psychic medium meant she never knew when her day would be disrupted by an impromptu drum circle or a house cleansing. However, it also meant she learned from a young age how to interact with the energy around her. Now, as an adult and a professional astrologer, she taps into her intuition to help her guide clients through the currents and obstacles that the energy from the heavens provide. And that intuition has also pushed some spooky encounters into her life. Prepare to hear about her very unique business today on Homespun Haints. Hello, Hainted Loves. Welcome to Homespun Haints. I'm Becky.
And Diana.
We're talking to another professional astrologer today. We spoke to one back in season 3, I think.
3, yeah.
We spoke to Brad, yeah. But today we're going to be talking to Aurorah. She is incredible. You are going to love her conversations because not only can she read the stars and tell you how best to spend the time in your life, but in her life, she's seen some ghosts. Boom.
Nice segue.
Thank you. Aurorah is awesome. You're really going to enjoy this interview with her. She's funny. She's really down to earth and yet incredibly mystical at the same time.
Down to earth yet lost among the stars.
Ooh.
That's a good title for this episode.
It is. Probably won't be the title, but you all can remember that and wish. Wish upon a star that had been the episode title. Oh my gosh, they just keep coming. Oh!
Astrology, a field rife with puns.
It really is. Sorry, Aurorah, but I'm sure you've heard them all before.
I'm sure that's why she chose it as a profession, for the puns.
Because of all the puns. Yeah, that would be my reason.
Definitely.
I don't know much about astrology, though, but I am looking forward to learning more from her newsletter,
Indeed.
which you'll hear about.
She has a different way of reading than Brad did, so it's a different point of view, different perspective. We're talking about new stuff, but most importantly, we're talking about dead stuff.
So, starting this Thursday, Diana and I are going to be releasing another podcast on YouTube.
Get excited.
Yeah.
Is it about ghosts? Kind of. It's about the ghosts of our past.
Oh, that was a laugh. It is called The Second Startup. And it is sponsored by The Concept Spot, which if you aren't a patron, you've heard the commercials for, the web design company that we've been promoting on here, which I opened back in 2006. Been making websites for a while, folks.
That's when I met you. Oh,
yes, that's right. Diana would come over to my apartment with a book that would be like, the 2-hour work week. And she'd be like, how can we make this happen? You and me. And years later, I was like, let's tell ghost stories. And so anyway, it's called The Second Startup, and it's about how to launch your startup, how to market it properly. A lot of people don't think about marketing their startup, but this is really about like all the things that you're doing from the get-go to make sure that you get noticed, you get the funding you need, you get the sponsorship that you need. You don't make the mistakes that Diana and I made because, boy, we've made them all. But it's a good thing for you because that way you don't have to make them too. You can suck at the marrow of our knowledge.
Suckle at the marrow.
That sounded really weird. I guess that's what's a ghost thing. So like skeletons, bones. Mm-hmm. Nobody's eating our bones.
Not until they eat the rest of us first. I know that I had formed several companies before I turned 15. First company was a friendship bracelet sales booth on the side of my street, which was on a dead end on a cul-de-sac. So very, very few people drove by, but those who did came and bought a friendship bracelet from me for 25 cents. It took me about 8 hours to make. So that's how much my time was worth when I was that young. I started a business punching holes in tags for other people's businesses at 1 cent per tag. I started a business. I set up a haunt made out of refrigerator boxes for other kids in the neighborhood and charged 10 cents for them to enter into the haunted house. I also set up a snow cone stand, bought my own snow cones, and I had scary dolls from the 60s as my theme at the snow cone stand. And after that, my mom started a company. Actually, I went into business with her, face painting at children's events. After that, I started making hemp jewelry and consigning it in local shops in Colorado, small towns.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was all before I turned 15.
Wow, you're going to make me think of what I did before.
What did you do? I was going to ask you. For sure you had companies when you were under 15.
Yes, I did. The very first company I started was when I was 7. I did illustrations of people's dogs for them for $5 a drawing.
That's awesome. That's brilliant. That's like a real job.
Yeah, that's why, like, later on, recently, when we were looking at getting a dog, I knew all of the dog breeds because
you had looked them up to be able to draw them better.
Yes, in encyclopedias, of course. Yeah,
of course.
Multi-volume
encyclopedias sold door to door.
Right. So I started that little business in my elementary school and was doing pretty well, earned some money. The next business I started, I made wire tree sculptures, which you can now find for sale for like hundreds of dollars. I got really good at it.
Oh, you mean the like tree of life sculpture that has the wires and the stones, or did you just do wires?
Nope. I used stones.
Dang.
I did different stones for different purposes. I would match different colored wires. I tried all sorts of things. I would also sometimes use artificial flowers. I got my hands on some really cool colored electrical wires once, and they were all like multicolored. I based my pricing off of how many branches they would go on, and then I would go hunting for, like, in quarries and things, for pieces of marble and slabs of quartz and other cool rocks and stuff in the area, and put the trees on there. Sometimes I use a slab of agate, and I'm still really good at making them. If anybody wants a wire tree sculpture,
I do.
Yeah, I'll show you how to make them. They're really fun. It's really therapeutic to make those things, like all the twisting.
I need to learn this a lot more than I need to learn how to make a corn husk, Becky.
Dang it. Yeah, so those are the two big ones. Obviously, I also, for a while, I was doing commissioned paintings. When I got to college, I set up laundry classes.
Laundry class?
Because a lot of the guys had never done their own laundry.
Teaching young men how to do their own laundry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I did
They
that
didn't
for a while.
consider this as part of life.
No.
Before they moved out.
I also started teaching violin when I was 13, too. So that, I got some money for that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I got a couple of commissioned pieces of artwork, too. So I would tell people to freeze frame their favorite scene in an anime, and then I would draw that for them at, like, a larger scale.
That is really cool. Anyway, so all of that's to say, before we even became adults, Diana and I were out there hustling.
We were hustling. It's true. My mom also started like 3 more businesses that I was a partner in, or at least a part of.
Diana and I also started a ton of businesses.
Without moms. Yeah.
Without moms, and also as adults. We're just natural entrepreneurs, and we've done it all. We've done tech startups. I've spoken and pitched in front of venture capitalists. We've done brick and mortar. We've done service-based. We've done product-based. We've done online. So please check out our show, because we talk about our mistakes, but we also have a ton of successes in there. Please check that out. Go to youtube.com/@theconceptspot. That's TheConceptSpot.com. That's going to start airing this Thursday on September 12th.
We welcome you to be the first to leave us a comment on YouTube and let us know what you think, please.
Absolutely. Yes. And we have a new patron to give a shout out to.
Cool. Hooray.
Thank you, Jennifer, for joining our Patreon. Jennifer also submitted some spooky stories to us, so hopefully we'll have her on here soon, too, to share her scary stories. She has a lot of them.
Awesome.
But if you're not a member of our Patreon,
if for some reason you haven't quite yet, just go to patreon.com/Homespun Haints, and you can join at any level, including free, to get access to things like book club. And one of the best perks is that you get to listen to all Homespun Haints episodes ad-free, unlike this one.
Oh man, I had a rough day.
What happened, honey?
I was out with the guys, and they said I wasn't spooky enough.
Oh, honey, how could they say that to you? You're hella spooky.
You think so?
Of course. After all, you came up with the ectoplasm being ghost jizz theory, and you've been scratched by more horny ghosts than anyone else I know.
Well, I suppose you're right.
But if you're really worried about it, I have just the thing.
Oh, wow! A Spooky AF t-shirt?
That's right. Our Spooky AF line comes in shirt, sweatshirt, pillow, and even a high-quality mug.
Man, those are super awesome, especially for something with profanity on it.
What's even better, all these items were hand-lettered exclusively for Homespun Haints by world-renowned calligrapher Nikki Malik.
Holy ghostly cannoli, that's amazing.
From now on, whenever you brandish your Spooky AF gear, no one will accuse you of being boring.
Yeah, I'm Spooky AF.
Visit homespunhaints.com for all Spooky AF merchandise. Today on the show, we are thrilled to bring on Aurorah. She is the chief astrologer for Blood Moon Milk. She's also a writer and a very, very creative person, we have heard. She's also a podcaster like us. And she does a lot of things, but those are sort of the chief things that she's into right now, which is enough. That is definitely enough. So, and I'm very intrigued about, of course, the astrology part, because as you all know, that's something that we love to hear more about on this show. So Aurorah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So tell us about Blood Moon Milk.
So Blood Moon Milk was started as a podcast with a girlfriend of mine back in 2018. And so originally there was two of us, and then quickly it turned into sort of my show. And I wished her all the best. And it's been me podcasting solo with guests on occasionally ever since. We did take a hiatus for a couple of years, but we're back now. That hiatus was largely due to my father's declining health. And I've been very upfront about that with my audience. So the podcast kind of took a back seat, but I did stay in touch with my audience. I've been writing a daily horoscope email newsletter since 2018. So that was the thing that during COVID, during those really hard times, I could get up and I could write about what was going on with the planets and kind of give them some hope and give myself some hope too.
The last few years have been kind of rough. I'm sure that was really, really nice for people to be able to receive that in their inbox.
It goes out every morning at 6 a.m. and it's something that people can read over their coffee and get a heads up about what planetary chaos might be coming their way. If it's right now, we're recording on a day when Mercury's about to go direct after being retrograde. Today will be a little bit chaotic, and then I think things will kind of smooth out.
It's good to hear.
Yeah. Anytime a planet stations, whether it's going retrograde or about to go direct, its intensity is magnified, its energy is magnified, because it's sort of still and kind of burning a hole in space and time, sort of.
I'm surprised you agreed to this date for recording. This
well, she
might
chose
be complex. Well, hopefully we don't have any technical difficulties going forward. But you've been studying astrology since 2008. Do you have any specific examples or stories about how astrology changed your life since then?
It's an internal dialogue with myself mostly. So I got interested in astrology when I was in college. I was in art school in England, and astrology kind of became my almost meditation practice in a way. I would check in with what was going on with the planets and kind of just get quiet with myself. And like any college student, I had a certain amount of emotional turmoil that I was living through. And so it kind of helped me to frame social situations through the lens of what was going on with the planets and feel just less battered around by life in general. And it also kind of helped me to focus my energy if I knew Jupiter was going through my midheaven, the area of the chart that relates to career, I could feel confident in getting career opportunities or invitations to do freelance projects or something like that. So I could kind of prep my portfolio and just, it's been a very practical sort of tool that I use in conjunction with whatever creative projects I have going on.
That is very practical.
Is that a service that you offer to people?
As an astrologer? Yeah, absolutely. I do parties, I've done events, but I also do private readings via Zoom. And so that's something that people all over the world book me for. And I just read their chart and I kind of educate them on the process and what planets mean. And then I give them a lot of reading material. What we focus on really after the first session is how to use our time the most wisely we can, because it's the only thing we can't make more of. There's money out there that anyone can go and make, but no one can go and make more time. And so knowing, like, for example, if it is a Mercury retrograde phase, it's not a good time to launch a new project. It's just not. And if you can know that and adjust your schedule, your production schedule, into a more favorable time to launch something, there will just be a lot less resistance and it'll be a lot more smoothly flowing.
Sensible.
Okay. That explains why we've been having trouble recording this video thing, Diana.
Yeah.
We're launching a new podcast on entrepreneurship next month, and it's just been one thing after another, and I really wish I had known that.
It's going to be called The Second Startup, and the best way to find it is on YouTube.
All right. I definitely need to subscribe to your newsletter. How do I do that?
Head over to the website. It's bloodmoonmilk.com. And in the sidebar, there's a bunch of different tabs, but you can click on the daily dose and then you just subscribe there. Just make sure that you subscribe with your email you want it to go to, because it'll go through PayPal and it just simplifies the process for me. It's like buying me a cup of coffee to get the email. So the newsletter's not like written for Capricorns or for Aquarius. It's to educate the audience, because no one will know your chart as well as you will.
That's really fun. I like that. I feel like that's different than a lot of ways that we access astrology as lay people.
Right. You know, the little column in the newspaper.
Right.
Yes, the good old-fashioned horoscope column in the newspaper, which I think is a great tool. It's a way a lot of people first interact with or come to know about astrology. But I think it's sort of the worst way also, like, because at least the way astrology works, the system I use is Western Hellenistic astrology. When astrologers write horoscopes in a newspaper column, they have to cast a chart. And they usually do that by putting the rising sign on the ascendant for whatever sign it is. So if you're reading the Aries horoscope, they're likely putting Aries 0 degrees at the ascendant to get the houses. And that's where they're like, this month, Mercury is moving through your second house of earned income. However, that only works if your rising sign is the same as your sun sign. So, like, most people don't have that.
Yeah, okay. Coincidentally.
Right. Yeah.
Great.
So it doesn't set up the practice of astrology for success from the perspective of most people who are first coming in contact with it.
I see. So a lot of people are skeptical about astrology simply because they're being exposed to such a dumbed down version that it's completely inaccurate unless they meet a very specific criteria that they probably don't.
Yes, exactly. You completely understand. Yeah.
That is so many things, isn't it? Just that superficial knowledge is enough to make people go, I get it and I don't believe in it.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because astrology is a study that predates modern science and modern medicine, and we have thousands of years of data that is based on observation and probability. So it really is the ancient ancestor, grandfather of modern sciences, because it was so accurate and so highly regarded. But then I think it just fell out of favor in the 1800s around the age of the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution, when physics took the forefront of people's scientific minds, which is a good thing. I'm not negating science, but we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater necessarily.
Right, exactly. I mean, if it served for so many thousands of years.
There's some knowledge there, something.
Right. Absolutely.
We have actually interviewed another professional astrologer who said that his practice was largely based on his intuition or any kind of like mediumistic or psychic abilities that he might have. Whereas you said it's your practice is based on observation and probability. Do you also bring any kind of intuition or natural gifts into your practice?
Absolutely. I've definitely sat with clients before and looked at paper printouts of their charts with the transits on them. And I would look at something in the chart and I would get like an intuitive flash. One person I was reading for, Saturn was in their 5th house, I think, and there was something going on with it. But based on the transits itself, it wasn't like a square in opposition, really anything really difficult or hard. So it wasn't like a Saturn return that they were going through. But I was like, Saturn and their dad, Saturn symbolic of fathers. I just had this feeling. I was like, I hope you have a really good relationship with your father. I have a feeling there's something wrong. And they were like, I have a really great relationship with him. And then a few weeks later, he was diagnosed with cancer.
No.
And they really had to reorganize their personal life to make that a focus. I think they got to spend a lot of quality time together, kind of as a result of that little tip-off of just being more aware of it.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's really useful and also kind of spooky.
Totally. Intuition is not predictable. Like, astrology is pretty predictable. It's based on probability and observations. But when you get those sort of little whispers from the universe when you're looking for something, you can't control or even really cultivate them. At least not in my experience. They just kind of come through sometimes when you least expect it, or even when you aren't looking for it at all.
And you mentioned to me earlier before we started recording that your dad was a spiritual medium.
Yes.
Oh.
Do you feel like his experience and your experience have something to do with each other? Did it kind of set you up for success in a way, having a family member who did that?
I think for a large part of my life, I was very resistant to anything different until I got to be a teenager, then a little bit more open-minded because I had personal experiences that I couldn't explain, but I wasn't into astrology yet. It wasn't until later on in college that I put that piece of the puzzle into my life. In hindsight, as I got older, I really did become a lot more appreciative of everything that my dad exposed me to spiritually and metaphysically. I was definitely exposed to an understanding of energy and how energy works because of him. And I certainly trust my intuition a lot more than maybe I would have if I had grown up in an environment where that was just ignored or tamped down or it wasn't nurtured.
That's amazing and wonderful, and I'm a little jealous that you we're in an environment where it was nurtured, because most people don't get that.
Well, I think it came with its own challenges, though. Like, it was not what everyone else was doing. Other kids, like, played soccer, and I came home and my dad would be having, like, a drum circle. I would just kind of like roll my eyes and like go upstairs and be like fucking hippies and like go listen to punk rock music. It was sort of a divergence of tastes in a lot of ways, but I like when I was younger, especially when I was a kid, I was like, why is my dad so weird? Why can't he just be like other dads? I just want to like do sports or something, and that is not an option.
After growing up that way, do you find it somewhat surprising or ironic that you ended up in the same kind of field as him?
Oh my God, it's so ironic.
You mentioned a few seconds ago that you had also personal experiences that you couldn't explain when you were younger.
When I was in middle school, it was like the first day of middle school, I was standing outside of whatever classroom I was about to go into for the first time, and I looked down the hall, and I heard a voice, a disembodied voice, say, "You need to be friends with that girl." And I was looking down the hall, and I was like, what, that girl? She's like really kind of dorky. But then I ended up being really good friends. That girl was my best friend for a few years until she passed away the summer after freshman year in high school.
Oh, no.
Which was there was more sort of unexplainable events around that. I wasn't there, but I was trying to get in touch with her that whole day, and the phone wouldn't go through, the phone wouldn't ring.
Oh.
Somebody was on the internet, and the dial-up was, you get the busy signal.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you can't even leave a message. It's just, try again. When the phone finally rang, it was her sister saying, "Oh, Rebecca just went out the door." And I was like, this sinking feeling just came into the pit of my stomach. And there was nothing I could do, and there was no obvious reason for me to feel that way. But I remember feeling that way and feeling like really frustrated and wishing I could go drive over there, but I couldn't. I wasn't old enough to drive yet. Then about 15 minutes later, after that phone call, my friend called me and said she'd been hit by a car. And she was crossing the street to go to another friend's house, and an off-duty police officer ran over. Yep.
Oh.
DeKalb County. Nothing happened to him. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Ugh.
He ran over a child and nothing happened to him. He got 2 weeks off without pay, I guess, but that's it. He got a vacation. But the point is, I knew, like, there was some part of me that was trying to protect her and keep her safe. And then when I got the phone call, I knew she was going to die. Like, I just knew she wasn't going to make it, even though she lasted in the hospital for almost 2 weeks. And I just had this feeling, I was like, she's just not going to make it. I think people kind of, like, blamed me, like, in some way, because I was the one who wasn't, like, hopeful, but it was like a sense of knowing, like, you walk outside and the sun is shining. You just know the sun is shining. It's daytime. But I knew she just wasn't going to make it.
Yeah, we don't talk about Bruno, right? There's always something blameworthy in knowing something in advance, isn't there, for people who don't listen to their intuition. But it kind of sounded like maybe that intuition of what your friend's fate would be was sort of semi-present even on day one when you just looked at her and knew that she had to be your friend. Do you feel like there was an overarching meaning to that experience in your life and your relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that happened in my life after her passing was, my whole friendship group landscape changed dramatically pretty much overnight, because as a teenager, you don't really talk to a lot of people anyway. Like, the people you do talk to are pretty insular and held really closely. And for me, Rebecca was the one person I could talk to about anything. And so when she was gone, it sort of cut my conversation conduit off. Our social group sort of, maybe I reminded them of her too much or something. So I ended up changing schools, and I got really into punk rock music and started a punk rock fanzine and started going to shows and got a job and kind of grew up and threw childish things out the window really quickly after her passing. And so it really kind of set me on a path of a love of music and a love of concerts. Even though I'm not musically talented to save my life, I can't play an instrument or sing. Not even punk rock. I'm just that bad. But I will say, like, somebody's got to listen to this stuff. Like, if you don't have an active audience member, concerts just aren't as fun. So
there you go.
Right.
I think a zine is a fine way to contribute to the movement.
Yeah.
The zine is worth it.
With your father being a medium, was there a way that you were able to communicate with Rebecca after her passing? Know that she's okay?
I remember having a dream, a very vivid dream, where she visited me after her passing. And she told me not to cry. She was pretty banged up after being run over by the cop. She had a broken pelvis and she had brain swelling, and she just would not have been able to heal and live a normal life after that. And so I think she kind of had a choice, like, on the spiritual level. I think she was kind of given a choice, but she didn't. She would rather have gone on, I think. And I think that's a perfectly fine choice to make, Knowing that she's sort of not handcuffed to a broken body, I think is some kind of solace for anybody, for anyone who's faced with a really steep recovery.
That dream in itself could have been a visitation. I'm sure
I
feel.
very strongly. I've never had a dream about her again. And that one was very realistic. It felt like it was pointed in a way that is sort of like highlighted subconsciously for me to remember it.
Yep.
And to bring me some kind of comfort, even though I was really depressed.
I bet. Especially if you felt powerless, but you felt like if there was something you could have done, you would have.
I would have done it in a heartbeat, yeah. I remember having the feeling like there's something invisible outside of myself that is keeping me from inserting myself into her life on that day. I couldn't get a ride to her house, the phone wouldn't ring. It just kind of felt like this one thing after another where I was being invisibly blocked from accessing her. And I've never looked at her astrology chart to know what was going on for her that day astrologically, but I would be really interested to see it.
Now, as an astrologer, do you believe in fate? Do you believe there are just some things that we cannot change?
I was just going to say all of this is kind of like making me worry about free will.
Yeah.
Well, we always have free will. We just do. We're human, and that's kind of the definition of humanity. And I say it on my show all the time. Mm-hmm. The stars and the planetary positions really just show us what we're inclined to do in a given situation. Mm-hmm. But we can always choose to take another path. That is always on the table. It's often an unsaid, unspoken option, but it's definitely an option.
That's encouraging.
Yeah, and I think I am wired to be sensitive. And I think that also shows up in my personal astrology chart, too.
And also just genetics, you probably inherited some of your dad's abilities.
Oh, I'm sure I did.
So have you had any experiences that you would say, like, could be defined as mediumship, personally? Anything that you've done where you're like, oh, that's that medium coming through?
I've definitely heard a voice here and there, like, throughout my life, but it's never been something I could really cultivate or actively have, like, when I want it to. It's like there's this story. I was out running on my lunch break from my job, and I was running through the woods at the Chattahoochee Nature Preserve, just outside of Atlanta, and it was a early spring afternoon, nice day for a run, and there's not really anybody in the woods, and I run up this hill and turn around, and I start heading back. I'm coming down this hill at a pretty fast clip, and I'm going around this curve, and I hear this voice outside of myself say, "Watch out for that snake." and I just sort of, like, come to a screeching halt, and I look around. There's nobody around me, and I just am more focused on the voice because I'm like, that was really loud. It was, like, louder than I could have possibly yelled loud, and there's nobody around me, and I'm walking very freaked out or down this path and around this curve, and there is a giant water moccasin curled up in the path that is like, it's a big boy, and it did not want to move.
So you would have totally stepped on him.
Totally.
Right through.
And then I would have been in the woods alone
with the water moccasin bite. Yeah.
Yeah.
No good.
Those are not good. You'd be in the hospital for 3 weeks easy if they're able to find the antivenom.
Yeah, it would have been bad. Yeah. And then there was another time when there was no voice this time, but it was a similarly, like, something outside of myself sort of protecting me, I guess would be the right word. This was maybe a year or so after the Snake in the Woods event. I was driving home from a wedding. It was late, but getting on the highway, it was like, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's like the roads weren't the roads I was supposed to be going down. It was like I kept taking wrong turns for some reason. But, like, I was following the directions on my GPS, and it was like some glitch in the Matrix or something. So finally I find I-20, the interstate back to Atlanta, and I get on it, and I'm going along, and I'm in the second lane from the inside road, like inside lane. And it's about 10:30, 10:45 at night, and suddenly there's just this wall of fire in front of me. A car on fire came from all the way in the right-hand lane and crashed into the median in front of me. And it bounced off the median, off the concrete barrier, and was rolling into my lane. And the car next to me hit it, and I don't know what made me do this, but I was like, well, I guess if I'm gonna die, I better, like, go out quick. So I just floored it. I didn't put the brakes on. I just kept driving, and I felt like this hand, I don't know, stiff breeze, something, moved my car just like a quarter of an inch or something, just like, but it moved sideways. It didn't move forward, it moved sideways, and the car bounced off the median behind me. Like, in the amount of time it took for me to get around it.
Whoa.
And if I had slammed on my brakes, I would have been in that pileup.
Yeah.
And there was a pileup. Like, everybody else at that wedding was stuck in traffic for hours. Because some people really got it that night.
Oh my gosh.
So, like,
wow.
I just went home and crawled in bed and ate pizza under the covers and was like, I'm not leaving my house for a little while. I'm just gonna
I can't blame you.
hide here.
Whoa.
It's a miracle. Like, one of the things in my personal astrology chart that I think about a lot of times, I've read so many astrology books, and occasionally there will just be a phrase that lingers in your mind, kind of almost like Harry Potter style, where like the words themselves kind of come alive and are vibrating in your mind. And it has to do with my Mars placement in Pisces. My Mars is at 1 degree of Pisces, which is a super intuitive placement. But I'm a Sun in Sagittarius, so my Mars and my Sun are square each other, which means for me, I am wired to do better when I am more aggressive, when I don't let things just come to me. And so that particularly plays out well, I think, driving, when I am a more proactive, aggressive driver. And I will say, like, that's one of the thoughts that was in my mind as I put my foot down on the gas that day. It was like, well, at least if I'm going fast, I won't linger long if I get into this accident. But it like actually pushed me past it. Yeah.
Whoa. So in your deepest speculation, do you feel like that was 100% you and your intuition?
There was something else at play also. I think it was both. I think it was kind of maybe a higher self conversation with this entity that's not necessarily conscious to me, but I was thinking either I'm out of here and this is like lights out for me, goodbye, or let's go. Let's get out of here, the situation. And it was like, okay, well, I'll help you. Just nudge you the little bit that you need to completely avoid it. But it felt like an invisible hand just moved the car just ever so slightly. Not much, but just enough.
So it sounds like for your practice, there's definitely a crossover between astrology and metaphysics and spirituality. Do you have any specific stories? You mentioned you're very into past life study.
In astrology, there are these things called the lunar nodes. It's one of the only astrological points that's not a planet. It has to do with the ecliptical cycle of the moon and the way it's moving around us. But these 2 points, they're on an axis, and they change signs every 18 months or so. And the sign that they're in is always where our eclipses fall. So right now we're living through the Libra South Node, Aries North Node axis. And so we've been in an 18-month period where every 6 months or so we get a cluster of eclipses in the sign of Aries and Libra. If you have Aries or Libra placements in your chart, personal planets or moon or whatever houses those two signs happen to fall in, that gives us an opportunity to kind of rewrite and throw out stuff that's not working and sort of start over in a sort of dramatic way. But the South Node in particular gives us some kind of insight as to what our gifts are, what our comfort zone is from past lives, but also what we're born in this life with, that it's almost like baggage that's kind of holding us back. And then the North Node is a bit of an indicator spiritually on the things we need to work on. You can kind of get a sense of what karma we might have collected from a past life by looking at an astrology chart.
My mind is blown. This is amazing.
Yeah.
One thing I really enjoyed hearing you talk about was just like how you can look at your chart and get sort of guidance for like when you should start a project or when you should, maybe lay low. When is it a good time to start something new? When is it not? Do you find a lot of people, like business people, come to you for advice on, yeah, you're nodding. Yeah.
Yes. You would be surprised at who my clientele is. I get a lot of doctors. I get a lot of heads of hospitals and CEOs of international companies who come to me.
Wow.
It's shocking the amount of brain power and the intellectual acumen that sits across from me. But they value their time. Like, they've got plenty of money, an hour with me to tell them, like, the best way for them to use their next quarter is a wise investment for them.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And with the ability to kind of tell people how to use their time, does that also give you insight into like predictions for world events? Like, did you have any insight that COVID was coming? Or...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Well, so yes, I kind of had the broad strokes and the bullet points, but I couldn't tell you it was coming from China or it would be a virus necessarily. What I did know, in December of 2019, there was a super conjunction between Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn. And astrologically speaking, and they were also in the sign of Capricorn. Those are all outer planets, and each of those outer planets move very slowly and carry a lot of weight with them because they move so slowly, energetic weight. Pluto is only just now going into Aquarius later this year for the first time. The first time in our lifetime, he'll be in Aquarius for the rest of the next 20 years or so. He's going retrograde for a few months into the last degree of Capricorn, but when that super conjunction happened, Pluto is death, transformation, and rebirth. Think of it like the phoenix, like everything burning to ashes and then coming back up and being reborn. Saturn is big restrictions and limitations and government.
Whoa.
Jupiter expands everything that he touches, and Jupiter moves a lot more quickly. He was in Capricorn. He went through Capricorn and Aquarius during COVID, and Aquarius is the hypochondriac of the zodiac. So it wasn't until he hit Aquarius later on that we started to see lockdowns happen. And that's when people got super hyper aware of germs, which is a very Jupiter and Aquarius kind of theme. But did I look at the astrology in November of 2020 at what was coming up and say, oh, we're going to have a lockdown and we're going to, like, the world is going to break? No. But I knew something big was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And that we needed to be really sensitive and hyper aware. And then it was early December, I listened to a podcast out of Australia, and they were talking about what was going on in China before it was hitting our mainstream media waves. And I was like, it made me think, but I don't think there was any astrologer who could have been like, it's COVID.
Right.
Right.
The other thing that happened around then too, there was a comet that went by, and that's not something we look at in astrology often, but comets are historically thought to bring germs and plague with them.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Like there's microbio material that lives in the ice in the comet's tail, and it can fall into our atmosphere and do stuff that, like, it just doesn't always do stuff, but there are correlations between people seeing comets go by and then experiencing outbreaks of some kind of plague.
Amazing.
Wow. Okay.
One thing I saw in my dad's chart was when he got really sick, I saw Saturn coming for his ascendant, and that's when he passed. away. And I remember he asked me to look at his chart to tell him how much time he had left. And I was accurate within a few days. And I think it really freaked him out, but it also kind of like helped us to sort of come to a sort of peace with things beforehand too. Not that it was easy, but like when he asked me to look and when I said it, and this is not a service I provide to clients. I only did this because it was my dad and he asked.
Right.
But when I said it and I saw the look on his face, I think we both knew it was true.
Oh, wow.
Bittersweet. And a lot of times I don't want to be right because I'll be like, oh, that's a really nasty transit that's happening. And I don't want to be right about bad things happening. I would rather be right about good things happening.
Aurorah, I feel like my brain has expanded so much just talking to you. You have
Seriously.
so much knowledge, and I can't wait to learn more and sign up for your newsletter. I know that we're going to be talking again at some point because you've just been a fabulous guest, and I know you have so much more to share. Well, tell people your website one more time where they can go and listen to your show, find your newsletter, all of those things.
Yep, all things are over at bloodmoonmilk.com. You can watch the podcast, listen to the podcast there. The podcast is always free. If you'd like to sign up for the newsletter, you can sign up for the Daily Dose. It's in the sidebar over there at the website, or you can go and book a session.
Nice.
Excellent. Well, Aurorah, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us today. You are a font of knowledge. Loved talking to you. This has
Absolutely.
been wonderful.
Thank you, ladies. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Aurorah.
Well, Hainted Loves, next time Jupiter moves slowly through the sky, remember what all energy he brings. After all, he did kill his father, if you know the myths, and that's guaranteed to bring you a spooky day. Homespun Haints is hosted by Becky Kielimnik and Diana Doty, and produced by Homespun Haints Media LLC. Editing and music by Becky Kielimnik. Show notes by Diana Doty. If you have a ghost story and you'd like to be considered as a guest for this podcast, please visit our website at homespunhaints.com/submit.